What's up, everybody? We have buried the lead this week. We probably should have made a clickbait headline about Gervonta Davis and Lamont Roach Jr. That's what we're going to start with. But I feel like we're a hardcore boxing show, and there's a really good fight happening this week that's consequential, that really matters in the division, and that's who we appeal to, right? We're not appealing
Guys like
to
Jesus M see right through it.
guys through Jesus M. He is not going to. That's our constituency.
Our guy sees right through it.
Sees through it, bro. So as always, I am joined by my co-captain of the ship, Dakota, who is here. And Dakota, how are you doing this week?
Doing fantastic, brother. Happy to be here again, as always.
Well, that's wonderful. So let's start with the news that we've known it for a while, but now there's been things thrown around on the internet and stuff. I actually haven't followed the story in detail, but it's topical enough because Gervonta Davis is a figure who people really, really enjoy in the sport of boxing. He's very popular. People like having opinions about him. And now there's talks that, Lamont Roach and his team may be, there's no documents, right? So we don't know, but they might be pursuing that they need to be compensated for that rematch not happening. I wanted to start with your thoughts on this fight. Not fight, but what are your thoughts in an abstract way? Do you think anything is owed to Lamont Roach and his team for holding training camps, for not taking another fight after Gervonta when he was a pretty big name in the sport, coming off a big performance, waiting all the way until September, and now not necessarily having an opportunity? Do you think he's owed anything, or do you think this is just the luck of the draw?
Man, I mean, if I'm just talking purely on principle, I do think he is owed something because it's the right thing to do. The guy, I felt like Roach won the fight. A lot of we've talked about it. A lot of people feel like Roach won the fight, and the fact that he's not getting the rematch and in place of what's replacing it with Jake Paul, it sucks, dude. But the flip side of that, as much as I think it's the right thing to do, as far as I understand it, the only one with a rematch clause was Tank. And so when those are the terms that you agree to, whether they're fair or not, unfortunately, I just don't think Tank is obligated legally. So
I just find it frustrating, right? Because it's like boxing is built in a way. People always say boxing's political or boxing is a business. It's not a business at all. You and me have debunked that. That's one of the worst notions in boxing. If it was a business, people would literally go, what makes the most money? How do we do it? But, we don't have critical thinking in boxing often. So people go, business means money and what it is. Business to me is like the NBA and the NFL. How do we give the fans the most consistent product, and how do we create growth? How do we expand globally? How do we kind of make money and money and money? To me, boxing's political. And in situations like this, where someone holds a lot of political capital, they just seemingly get every advantage. And that's just what boxing is. And for me, my heart goes out to Lamont and them because he really hasn't done anything wrong.
Which is why I say, if you're asking me, Lukey, what I think the right thing to do is, obviously I think the right thing to do is either give Lamont the fight or give him some money for waiting on it. But that's part of the risk you take when you sign that contract that says he's not obligated to rematch you. Even if the man says to your face, I'm going to give you a rematch, and here's the date, and here's the time, and here's the venue, he's not obligated.
Gervonta is turning into a very frustrating figure in boxing because for years people had him on pound for pound lists. I never jumped to that bridge of putting them to the pound for pound list. You had him on your pound for pound list.
Sure.
I think the talent is there. It's just we never got that 50-50 fight. We never got that fight where we completely felt as though, man, this is that fight where, and the frustrating part is, I'm not sure about right now, but during that run, 2018 to 2023, probably could have beaten most of the guys. Like, I don't really understand why not take those risks, because I think there was a chance that he became legitimately a top 5 fighter.
I mean, when you take those risks, though, you don't keep that necessarily, as we saw with the Lamont fight. I mean, we don't know But that's supposed to be boxing, right? Like everybody loses. That's pretty much how boxing winds up. And so to have a career centered around avoiding that, I think has been ultimately the biggest disappointment.
It's been a frustrating career, just to be honest, because
There's a lot of hope and promise for him, for what he was going to represent for American boxing, for how he was going to follow up the Mayweather era and create something similar to it. And that has not happened.
And especially like I think we went to the UK in like 2017, wins an exciting fight against an up and comer. People go, wow, this guy's on the rise. And then it really felt like after the McGregor Mayweather fight, I believe he had a scale fail on that one. Just never really kind of got back. You know, he's had moments. The Isak Cruz fight was a last minute fight. We never saw a rematch. Lamont fight, you know, tough fight. It's like at a certain point, if guys give you a rough fight, you'd kind of like to see the rematch, you know?
And listen, even if it wouldn't have been the best fight, even if we're talking, you know, let's pretend boxing's a business. You do a rematch with Ryan, right? Like, isn't that a no-brainer?
Yeah.
I mean, I find that very peculiar.
Okay, let's get into our next topic. I sent an invite over to our guy Albert Bell and his promoter Vic Green. I don't think they saw it, so we may or may not get a jump on guest appearance at some point on the show, because I thought it would be cool to get them to come on to talk about
Hell
it.
yeah.
But our guy Albert Bell was in action last night.
Lukey, where could I have watched that? Did I fuck up?
No, it was on millions.co, and I didn't even watch it. And it's really a shame. You know, it's a shame when you have really a TV quality. I'm watching highlights.
You got your lo-fi beats playing, bro.
Well, the lo-fi beat came from me not muting a Albert Bell highlight video quick enough. He won a fight there, and yeah, I mean, that's what it is. You know, he won a fight, and it is what it is. It moves on, but it didn't really impact much, you know.
I feel like if all was, because he's at 130 pounds, right? Like if all was fair and just, he'd be the one getting the Shock Foster slot instead of Stephen Fulton. Not that Fulton isn't a tremendous fighter, but like it just seems like that athletically makes more sense.
Does, but when does boxing ever say, hey, let's make something make sense, you know? Doesn't always say.
Rarely.
That's not always a big thing with boxing. It's like, hey, let's make it make sense. Although, to be fair, Fulton holds a belt in the WBC. If he chooses to move up in weight, I guess that makes sense because he's a title holder in another division moving up.
Oh, I love the fight. I'm just saying that if that's the
kind of fight. But to be fair, Dakota, which Albert's not really often on television, so it makes sense. You wouldn't know this. He's friggin' Albert's at lightweight now. So Albert is at the lightweight division. I think he's there because he wants to get an opportunity. There's some bigger name fighters at lightweight. It's just what it is. You know, it's just what it is. So that happened. We have absolutely no clue how the fight happened. We got our guy Man Key Crazy saying helly, which I assume is hello. How you doing? What the helly? But I don't know. So that's that. We hit on that topic. That's kind of something that we've gone over. And then we will follow that up with, there was an announced card this week, and that card was our guy, the Princessa, Anthony Olascuaga, taking on, let me get this guy's name right, Juan Carlos Camacho. It's going to be the week of Terence Crawford, Canelo Alvarez. It's going to be the start of a developmental series, I believe, called Underdogs, which will be a monthly show starting in January of up-and-coming talent. This card will feature guys like Justin Viloria and Jalil Hackett and one of my favorite amateurs turned pro, Jamar Talley. These guys will all be featured on this card. Any excitement towards this fight card that will be happening midweek? next week.
Well, and most importantly, Lukey, where can the people watch it?
So it's going to be on DAZN. So the card will be on DAZN. It'll be on DAZN. Maybe it'll stream on the YouTubes. Every now and then these I wouldn't say less than, but not as big cards end up on DAZN. And that's something that,
But sometimes they don't, much like the fight that's in our title this week that is obviously, a main event streaming or network level fight that is just kind of on a website that I've never heard of.
Well, we'll get to that, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on this up and coming card. What do you think?
Listen, bro, anytime we can get a promoter that is understanding that not every card is going to be the Super Bowl and that you have to build the future of boxing, I'm all for it, bro.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really what boxing is missing is some of the monotony that we used to get and complain about, where it's like week-to-week fights. In the month of August, we had 2 weeks without a major network fight. And I get it, we had 5 weekends. So we had 3 weekends with, but really the 2 big tentpole fights in America was Kenny Sims, Oscar Duarte to start the month. And then we had
It's been light, bro. It's been light.
And then we had a back-to-back MVP prospects card, which I liked, 2 nights of MVP, but it didn't really seem like outside of guys like you and me that a lot of boxing fans even tuned into it. It felt like that was more so a hardcore thing, even though Jake Paul's involved. It was more a hardcore fan that tuned in. And Moses Atuma's fight was the middle of the day in the U.S., and it was behind a paywall.
Yeah, it's been light, dude. It's been a light month. It's been a light couple months overall.
You know why Boachuk versus Brandon Adams is at catch weight of 156 pounds? You know what? Let me reach out to that team and try to get clarification. I might try to post a story this week, or I will come back next week and do that.
I love that rematch is happening. Brandon Adams fights are just, you never know when they're coming. They don't happen very often, and they just kind of pop up out of nowhere, and they are significant over multiple generations now.
Bangers. He gives you a banger.
Yeah.
And if you were hearing like low audible noise for a little bit, I actually had the YouTube stream on in my background at a very low volume, which is so on brand for this telecast. So I was actually live streaming our show on delay. So I was wondering why there was noise back there. But Brandon Adams is kind of like, what would you say he's like the Sean Price, a hip hop comparison, Sean Price of boxing? Like the deep heads enjoy a Sean Price verse, but like,
yeah, but it's like you also don't really know what you're getting. Like, he got knocked out in the second round in that tournament that he was in back in the day.
John Thompson.
The Jamal Charlo fight, he kind of laid an egg a little bit, but then he like stops Boachuk, and he's, he won some other tournament, and there's, he's just like, I've never
music comparison. Someone that like is like, I guess maybe Mos Def. Like sometimes Mos gives you a jewel, and then sometimes he does like a rock album, and you're like, why did I buy this?
But maybe even more like Lupe Fiasco, because I love me a little Lupe, but he could drop a dud too now and then. And so can Brandon Adams, frankly.
So Brandon Adams musical comparison is Lupe Fiasco.
I think that's what I'm going with, dude.
I never got into Lupe, so that's one where his catalog never really worked for me.
There's some bangers, bro. There's some bangers.
I think that might be like an age thing. When I was kind of aging out of music or a certain level, you were probably just entering. So like the thing happened for me. I remember Mos Def had an album called The New Danger, and I remember for me it was like I came from Black on Both Sides and some others, and it just was such a different album that I remember being disappointed because it wasn't a continuation of Black Star and his previous albums. And I feel like that might be my comparison of Brandon Adams, where really good fighter, but you don't necessarily build off the last performance would be the way I'd define him.
Yeah. Well, it's tough. It's tough when you're not in the ring. It's tough to build momentum, but he has these moments of significance that keep him relevant. And so when he fights every 2.5 years, you're like, oh yeah, I remember him.
Also, Underdogs is a Bass boxing card. Someone asked in the comments. Let me look into that, because that's something that I don't have an answer for. I guess if you really want to know, I will go into the my database and try to figure it out, but that's something I can. And as Vergil Ortiz checked Boachuk's chin, Surrey had wobbly legs in round 11 and 12. Like, so I don't know if I was telling you this, but I was talking with someone. To me, Virgil's like the uncrowned champion in boxing. He doesn't have a belt, but I view him as a champion, even more so than some current belt holders. And when you fight a guy like Vergil Ortiz, I do think it takes a little out of you, because I think that he's one of those Hall of Fame boxers and a generational puncher that it's not ridiculous to think that he takes miles off a guy's careers.
100%. His fights are brutal. You know, he's a slowly pedal to the metal guy. It ramps up a little bit every round. And so, like with Madrimov, it looks like a 50-50 fight for about 6 rounds. And then he pulls ahead and he pulls ahead a little more. And then you look at it, round 10, he's miles away. And it happens quick.
Also, like, I wouldn't be shocked. He's the classic guy where it's like, okay, here's Madrimov. Good fight with Crawford. Good fight with Ortiz. Never has another meaningful fight again that's at that level, because like those two guys just take a lot of the tread out of the tire. And I think Ortiz is a guy, no one ever talks about him like this, but let's have this conversation, right? Guys don't fight Ortiz and then have a great performance after. Mean Machine, like the guys typically they fight him and then they start to go down. Like it could be a correlation, people could go, but I think that part of it is he's such a physical fighter that after you fight him, you leave a piece of yourself in the ring.
Well, and I think he forces the pace so much that you kind of just wind up emptying the tank.
Look who's here.
Our guy. What's good, bro?
Read it for the chat, man. Give him a shout
Saludos to our guy, Jesus.
Can Vergil enter the pound for pound beating Lubin without being a champ? I think he can.
I think he can too. There. When you look at that and then Madrimov, and Boachuk all back to back to back, that's quite a little run. I don't think you have to, but there's an argument for it 100%.
I mean, to me, he's an uncrowned champion. To me, he's more accomplished, and his resume right now, since coming back, he took a couple of fights to get back on his feet. Now it's Boachuk, Madrimov, and Erickson Lubin. That's a hell of a resume. Add to the fact that he's fought guys like Mean Machine when he was very young. I mean, for a young fighter, you could argue he has one of the best resumes for a young fighter. And I think the big thing about him is we've never heard issues with him accepting fights. It seems like there's a willingness to take hard fights. He signed to fight Tim Tszyu, and he says, remember when Tim Tszyu was supposed to fight Vergil Ortiz? And that was the best version of Tim Tszyu in theory, the most confident. The thing about Vergil is it just seems like there's a willingness to be great and a willingness to take on whoever is willing to sign a contract.
Sort of the antithesis of Tank in a lot of ways. Like it doesn't feel like you got to pull Vergil Ortiz's leg to make a tough fight. And maybe he doesn't get quite enough appreciation for it, but I think that'll accumulate for him.
I think in a couple of years, people are going to really embrace him, because I think the fight that's going to happen and it's going to sneak up on people is him and Jesus Ramos.
Oh, I fucking hope so, dude.
I think that's the fight that's coming, bro, because they're like the same type of guy. That to me feels like a real Mexican-American rivalry. They're both really, really nice people.
That's got all-timer written all over it to me, man.
But that signals to me, that fight signals, like, because the scariest fighters to me, Dakota, and let's get spiritual, let's get deep, right? Because we don't have a ton to talk about. Scariest guys to me are always these friggin' guys who are super nice. They're not trash talking you. And you know what I say about that? They hold all that anxiety and fear inside and they bring it to the ring with them. The guys that trash talk, say funny things, cool things, to me, I feel like that's always a little bit of weakness in that, because you're letting that anxiety out. You know, you're living with some fear, because everyone's afraid going into these fights. And I feel like Vergil and Jesus really embody that. They're just so cordial and kind, but they're intimidating. You know, they're ferocious.
Yeah, I know that Jesus is up at middleweight now, and he's a big guy, and that's where he should be. But I can't imagine Vergil is going to be a career 154 pounder, and that's a fight that could just like save the middleweight division real quick if they wanted to do it.
Oh, I love that fight. I think also another fight that we need is either Vergil or Jesus versus Xander, because that's the Mexican Puerto Rico fight of the modern era. It could be, and they could both fight him, but I think that we need one of those fights in a year or two. We need one of those.
Or anybody versus Bakram Murtazaliev.
I mean, he just got a fight. It sounds like there's rumors that he's fighting Josh Kelly, which I mean that's not really like the most appetizing fight for me, because Josh has shown vulnerabilities later in fights, and Murtazaliev's a big puncher, but at least he's active, right?
It's a good fight, and he'll probably there's tougher fights he could take that would pay less. So I think it's a good fight for him.
Okay, let's get to the lead. Let's get to this main event fight that we wanted to talk about. This is what we're building our show around. This is for our guys like Man Key Crazy and Jesus M, who love tuning into our show. We do these shows for the sickos like ourselves who are sitting in boxing gyms and sitting in the last row of a fight and want to talk fights, and they go, okay, they're probably sitting there and they think they're a little bit smarter than us, just like how we probably think, oh, we know just a tiny bit more than them. And they're just sitting here and they agree with most of what we say, but they disagree sometimes.
They're the third member of the show, bro.
That's just a fact. But I think that's an accurate description, right? I think that this is not a show. This is a community, right? This is a community of people that just love boxing and love these things. So Iglesias versus Vladimir Shishkin, to me, is a fight that I'm excited about. And for those that are unaware, I believe it's taking place on a punchinggrace.com. For those that don't know what a punchinggrace.com is, that's Eye of the Tiger Management's website that will take on that will show it. I think that they'd been showing fights maybe in other markets, but because of the ESPN Plus deal, it had been streamed on ESPN Plus.
Lukey, just real quick, maybe I've asked you this before, but why does the Top Rank deal expiring apply to them?
I don't know.
That's just strange to me.
Yeah, so there was some form of a deal within that deal that appears to have gone away. And this is a fight that I've been circling, because I guess I should say since March 2024, Iglesias has just done everything you've wanted an up-and-comer do. Comes out the gates, stopped Marcelo Sarrias, said his name absolutely perfectly, the guy that dropped Berlanga, the guy that went rounds with Diego Pacheco, a guy we're super Cosares. And like, this guy just comes out, steamrolls him. You know, and Diego Pacheco, I think you and me both would say that's one of the more promising up-and-comers, right? And he did something that he couldn't do just right out the gates. Follows that with an Evgeny Shevchenko, a guy who fought William Skull, went all the rounds with Skull. Really good fighter, promising fighter, who I thought was going to challenge for a title, stops him in a round. His last fight, there were guys that really, really were high on this guy. I don't know the guy's name, the last fight, but I remember Ivanov. There were guys that were very high on him, stops him. I mean, Iglesias is doing the same exact thing that basically David Morrell was doing. And you could argue that he's maybe even doing it against a higher level of competition. I'm not sure, because the problem is, as we move forward in time, we always devalue people's runs. I think Morrell's come up was pretty special, and he was doing it against guys that were pretty good, and people will always pick and choose as time goes on. Oh, they weren't as good as we think. Shishkin is one of these guys where I think he's also exceptional. He very well could have won the Skull fight. That was an atrocious fight. You thought that he did win the Skull fight. He's been someone where it just feels like he hasn't been able to find a home on television. This feels like this would be a guy who would be regarded as one of the best guys in the division if he had a home to fight on.
He's also just not, there isn't any one thing he does that provides a wow factor. He's one of those guys. He's the Hall of Very Good. Everything is very good. The power is very good. The skills are very good. The distance is very good, but there's nothing mind-blowing. And so I think it's easy when he's just consistent and good. Like when the Skull fight, it feels like the judges just kind of went to sleep on the rounds because they start to look similar. But I felt like he won that fight pretty clear. The issue is, you know, you talk about momentum a lot. This feels just like a momentum fight where Iglesias has all the momentum. He's, destroying opponents that in theory are step-up fights, and Shishkin is having a hard time getting people to pay attention and just lost a pretty bad decision to, a guy that's a real tough hang. And so to me, this everything about the momentum of this fight goes towards Iglesias, but this is a fantastic matchup. I mean,
and speaking of both guys' career and how they're not jumping off the page, this fight is happening the same day that NFL football is coming back in America, which I'm sure is not going to help. It's going against Cowboys versus Eagles game. So this is not going to be reaching the depths of beyond like the hardcore fight fans. This is one that can be
even just beyond hardcore fight fans. Now you're taking it down another level when you put a fight like this just on a website. When you put it on Iglesias versus Shishkin.com, it becomes very inaccessible.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because it's a really great fight, and I think it's just a sad situation of kind of where we're at transitionally in the sport. People are doing new deals, and we're in a time where we're just figuring out where
it's
things.
It's a lot to ask of the fans. It's a lot to ask of the fans to stay nimble. Don't get too comfortable watching stuff a certain way. We might throw you over here. We might throw you over here. Who knows who's going to
do commentary. It feels like a different version, but 10 years ago when the PBC was running about 20 fights a week, I'm exaggerating, but like 3 fights a week. Here's a fight on this network. Here's a fight on this network. And there were so many fights at so many different times. It was hard to keep up with where the fight was. I remember Lamont Peterson fought, who's the Cuban southpaw, Felix Diaz. And we forgot that it was on, and we just happened to turn on the TV, which also speaks to the time, because I feel like now most people have streaming like Hulu or YouTube, and they don't use like a traditional cable outlet. But at the time, 2015, we turned on the TV and the fight was on. And I remember everyone thinking, oh, this is going to be later on in the evening, and it feels like that. But it feels like now, at least then, you'd turn on the TV and you'd stumble to it. Now it just feels, I guess it feels like the early 2010s where you had to go to like Fatal Fury, online pay-per-view, because at least where this fight used to exist, in my opinion, was like on-demand pay-per-view.
It feels like sumo wrestling. Right? Like if I want to watch sumo wrestling, you used to watch the championships on ESPN every year. If I want to watch sumo wrestling, which is a fringe sort of culturally significant in a small area of the world sport, I can probably go on some random website and watch it. And so now the same applies to certain types of high level boxing. You might just wind up on, bigfights.co, big events.yay, or whatever the fuck it's going to be for the week. And you just gotta, just stay digging. Don't get too comfortable. Don't just check the zone to see what fights are on. Don't just check ESPN to see what fights are on. Stay on your toes, folks. You got to want it.
Okay. Well, that's a good take. I like what Dakota
I thought that was a good rant.
That was a good rant. Undercard, we got, I wouldn't say the matchups are great, but there are some fighters. I sent you my Wyatt Sanford interview, a big Wyatt
Great
Sanford
interview.
guy. Moreno Fendero, I think, is a guy who's going to win a world title. Dzmitry Asanau is a really, really good fighter. Jhon Orobio is a really good fighter. I'm not sure if the matchups are going to be interesting, but I think these are all talented fighters that are worth watching.
Man, I got to tell you, I think Dzmitry Asanau, I've seen him a couple of times, and he's somebody that really stuck out to me because he was, it was one of those top-ranked cards that was stacked, and he was right at the beginning, and he did not strike me as a guy that deserved to be at the beginning of anything. I was really impressed with his skill set, with his footwork, and I haven't gotten to see him since then. So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing his progress. But I think that's a guy that he kind of reminds me of Israel Madrimov. There's certain things he does with his footwork that are going to make him very difficult for a lot of guys.
Now we go to Michael Conlan. He's returning on Friday. I don't know the opponent. He's back. I think this is his second fight back. I'll do research in a second.
I just get kind of a Regis Prograis vibe, Lukey, where when I've seen him, like he still has fast hands. He's still got pretty good feet. He's got all the things, but the high level punch resistance isn't there. And that's what happens when you get chinned a couple of times or you have hard fights like he did. And I don't know, man. I don't really see it. I liked when I went to that 360 promotions card and he was on the promotional side. I thought he looked relaxed. I liked the idea that, oh wow, he can still talk after everything he's been through. You know, I'm never one to tell a guy what to do. I just personally, as a fan of his, don't really get it.
Well, for me, it's like, as a fighter, I think it's a scary spot because he's still able to be good enough to compete, but we just worry about his durability, like you said. And it's like, I'm sure in the gym, he's an absolute killer. So he goes in and he's sparring guys and he's probably annihilating people, and that keeps getting him motivated. But I guess for me, my fear is like, what's the end game? Like fighting another top guy in the division that we're not completely comfortable with seeing you fight.
I mean, listen, bro, he got stopped, and it's respectfully, he got stopped by Jordan Gill, who had a very low knockout percentage, and that would, you know, and the Lee Wood fight, that's a brutal knockout, man, and it was a tough fight. He's had a bunch of those, you know. Everybody has their limits.
Okay, now stop me if you've heard this before. ProBox TV this week has another good fight card. Does that sound crazy?
Sounds about right.
Sounds about right. Jordan White versus Rene Tellez-Garon. I'm not sure how familiar you are with Short Dog. He lost to Adam Lopez early in his career. He got a highlight reel knockout in 2023 on Showbox. I think we did a show after it. Big first round knockout. He's an up and comer. He's taken on Tellez-Garon at lightweight. For those that don't know, Tellez-Garon, he knocked out Carlos Balderos after losing to Michel Riviera and losing his undefeated record. Lose a couple of fights, one to Giovanni Cabrera. I believe he blew weight in the lead up to that fight. And then he resurrects his career, beating two kind of contender level fighters, George Acosta and Alex. I can't say his last name. We'll just say Alex D. And then he goes on and loses to Floyd Schofield. So he's been very up and down. They have a mutual opponent in Romero. Jordan White just fought him and beat him. And Tellez just had lost to him. To me, this comes down to the punch resistance. You know, White is a puncher, but the thing about Garon that we've learned is he can really punch. Like, he's a world-class puncher, and he's got a good chin, and he is rocking guys. So what are your thoughts on this main event?
Man, that fight with Rocky Hernandez was a fantastic fight. I mean, he clearly lost it, but for about 9 rounds, he was tremendous in that fight. And to see Rocky kind of have to do some different things, I think it partly what Tellez-Garon, the pressure that he brings, he kind of forces you to do that. Again, I don't know that I'm familiar with Jordan White. He's not looking familiar, but I'm looking forward to oh, you know what? I think maybe I saw that Kendo fight. That might have been the one I saw. Now that I
think you watched the Edson Garcia fight. That was on Showbox.
Possible. It's possible. I'm just not remembering them offhand. Again, boxing keeps us on our toes. You know what I mean?
So here's the co-feature, and I love this co-feature. Suleiman Segaway beats Ruben Villa. Could have beaten Bruce Carrington, 50-50 fight with Carrington. Hasn't fought since. He takes on Brian Acosta. You might say, who's Brian Acosta? He's the guy that almost beat Ramon Cardenas in that 50-50 fight back in February that was a banger of a fight. Man, this screams fight of the night.
This is my main event right here. I'm not going to lie. And I also feel like Sagawa, he's a main event fighter to me. There's guys like that like go up to a certain level and then you see them on an undercard. And again, and it's like, how the fuck?
Well, I think this one's a logistics thing. I think that White is from the region, so you want the main eventer to be a ticket seller.
Listen. That's fair. But at the end of the, like, for example, when I saw Jermaine Ortiz on the, deep in a prelim card the other day, I'm like, this is not a prelim guy.
Yeah, that was. But I think that
certain also, guys,
I think that was also, he lost his opponent. I don't think if he fought Steve Claggett, he would have been that low on the card.
I don't think he would have either. I'm just saying in general, there's certain guys that get up to a certain level and maybe get a bad decision or a close decision, and then they're like at the back of the line or something. I don't really get that.
White sparked out Edson Garcia in a round, said man key crazy. Trayvon Marshall is fighting in DC too. He's on the undercard. We're going to get to that as well. There's some really good up-and-comers on this undercard. You met 2 of them in person. Benjamin Johnson and Jordan Roach will be fighting on this undercard. Trayvon Marshall who moved up quickly, got knocked out by Gabriel Maestre, but he's a very promising up-and-comer. Derek Davis is another one that I've circled as a good up-and-comer. And then, get this one. This is a Dakota fight that I think that you'd like. Elijah Flores is in action against Damani Kato Kane. Let me make sure that this is still happening.
Yeah, that's the co-main right there.
This is a real fight because Elijah Flores, very promising fighter, very good fighter. Damani Kato Kane's been in many Terence Crawford camps. He has one loss to Eric Tudor, where Tudor kind of just kept him on the outside. He's got a draw with Jorge Maravilo. This is a fight. So that's another great fight. And then let me check my show notes. Oh, and then John Hatton Cardoso, Brazilian fighter who trains with Coach Mark in Florida, is taking on Luis Torres Valenzuela. Interesting subplot to this fight. Cardoso was knocked out 4 fights ago, has won 4 fights since. So fifth fight ago, he got knocked out. Valenzuela was knocked out 3 fights ago, has won 3 fights since being knocked out. They're meeting each other basically at the same crossroads. They had been knocked out, built some wins. They're both punchers. They're both a little bit irresponsible defensively. Can we say crazy things might happen in this one?
That they very well may.
Okay. More to know. In the UK, we got Pat McCormack fighting. Any thoughts on this card?
I have a whole new kind of sense of what his level can be after that Robbie Davies fight. I mean, I know Davies was kind of old, but he showed a nice variety on that one. That it's like, you know, I know he's being pushed as a British level prospect, but I was pretty impressed with that performance overall.
Well, he was one of the best amateurs of his generation. He was
you
actually
really see it that
Olympians. Time. He's taking on Miguel Parra. Parra is best known for taking on Shakram Gassiev at the Santa Monica Pure, and it was a very boring fight. So this is a step your game up fight for McCormack. If he can separate here, I think he enters into being a world title contender.
Yeah, I think that he's successfully fast tracking right now.
So also on this undercard, we have Sandy Ryan's return. If you check out her Instagram, big push-up person right now. I was like, what's she doing in the gym? Push-ups. So there's all these push-up challenges. I guess she's found push-ups as a fun hobby. So if you want to learn how to do push-ups, follow her. That was just a strange one. I'm like, okay, let's see what she's doing in the gym. A lot of push-ups. So have you
burpees?
Nope, no burpees. It's just no push-ups.
Burpees. All right.
I'll send you the account. It's crazy. Cameron Vong is listed on the card, but I don't think he has an opponent just yet. Since that Gavin Gwynn fight, I almost called him Gawin Gwynn because I was struggling with words. I think Vong's lost a little momentum. You know, he was a guy that I think flashy, had a good style. I think he's still promising, but I think he needs to slow down.
Slow and maybe do some push-ups with Sandy.
1 second. I've got to find my charger. So do you want to take on any of the lead here? Because my computer is low on battery juice.
Give me what the next card is before you walk away.
Let's go with Eduardo Nunez versus Christopher Pitufo Diaz. That will be on DAZN.
That's easy. I love that matchup, man. I think that Eduardo Hernandez at the moment, I mean, he's kind of an Isaac Cruz type, but it looks like maybe he's just right up at that next level. We don't quite know yet. And I think that Pitufo Diaz, you know, he's kind of a long proven contender at this point. I haven't seen him since the Henry LeBron fight, where he lost a relatively close decision and made a real stand in the last couple of rounds of that one. Has had some decisions that didn't really go his way. I thought he won the Dog Bay fight. But like I said, he's a Jose Pedraza type who's been in with multiple different kinds of styles and I think still has a decent amount left in the tank. So I would expect him to potentially give some problems to Eduardo Nunez, who's been dominant kind of at a certain level, but I don't know that he's been as dominant at this level. So at the moment, I think that that's a fun little contrast of styles. You know, we've seen Diaz, he can, you know, get up on the back foot and box. And then in the Henry LeBron fight, I have a hard time saying his name. He was on the front foot for the majority of the fight because obviously LeBron wanted to stay on the perimeter. I don't get the sense that, obviously Nunez is going to be the one making the fight on this one. So I would expect that Diaz will kind of take the role of the boxer. But this is a good matchup right here, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about it. More than likely, it's the last opportunity for Pitufo Diaz to fight for a title. So this is like a last chance fight. I'd say his fight against Henry LeBron was definitely not a bad showing. It wasn't a great showing, but it wasn't a bad showing.
I thought it was a good fight, man. That's a tricky guy. He won the last couple of rounds. Like, I thought he made a stand at the end. You could put that in the last chance category, but there's also guys that just like lose close decisions sometimes. And then if they're able to come up with a big win at some point, it almost doesn't matter what the number is at the end of the record. You know what I mean? And I feel like he's kind of moved into that territory. If he lost a split decision in this fight and then came back and knocked out a prospect in the second round, you get what I'm saying? It depends on how you lose at a certain point.
Nunez is interesting in the sense that he's basically a better version of Julio Cesar Martinez, but it shows you where boxing is as a whole, because when he's fighting, it's completely flying under the radar, as opposed to Julio Cesar Martinez. It felt like his fights a few years ago had a lot of pre-fight videos.
Yeah, you can watch him have a 3-round no contest.
But I mean, I remember there was he fought, who was it, Lee Wood, and you're getting in the ring with the devil, and he was eating pizza after the weigh-in. There's all these anecdotes I know about him from the build up to those fights. And I get it, he won in Britain and stuff, but here's Nunez coming off of a fight of the year fight for a belt. It's a little strange, kind of speaks to boxing right now when there's a guy that's like the new Emmanuel Navarrete possibly, and he just has a belt, and a lot of people might not even be aware of him just yet. That being said, I wouldn't be shocked if a guy there's two ways this fight goes. Nunez is he's obviously a real puncher, but Nunez takes over, overwhelms Pitufo and stops him. Or this fight shows that Nunez has some defensive liabilities, and this fight is really close.
I think he does have some defensive liabilities. I don't know that we even need to have that proven.
But I think that Pitufo might have some real success in this fight if he's able.
He's not Miguel Mariaga, bro. He's a bigger guy. He's fought bigger guys. I just think it's a little bit of a different level.
Yeah, I think that this could be an interesting fight. This could turn into a 50-50 fight, because Nunez, I don't want to discredit his last opponent, but we haven't really seen him in with a guy that we stamp as a true proven veteran at the world level.
Mariaga is probably the closest thing, but again, that's an older guy.
That's an older Mariaga. That's not 2016 Mariaga.
No, and so you're right. I think we've watched him be dominant at a certain level, and maybe that's part of why he's not getting as much attention as the opposition. But I think that this is, helps change that. Yeah, this is Sugar Nunez, by the way.
This is Sugar Nunez. And I think the other thing to throw into this too is, why guys sometimes don't fight those guys sometimes?
It's a tough hang.
And also guys don't want to fight them. So there's he's either really avoided or this is really strategic. And I think this fight's going to tell us a little more.
Sure.
Okay, so that's that fight card. Nunez. Okay, and now we are going into, you're not going to even believe this, man. This kind of is a sign of the times. Oscar Valdez fights this weekend.
Who would have thought, dude? Could have fooled me.
He's taking on Richard Medina. Medina's a former Raymond Ford opponent. They're both
pretty good. I remember him being pretty good. Nothing crazy, but that's not the worst opponent he could get.
Well, I mean, Medina's a guy who was a prospect at one point. He was built up, developed his record, went to the next level, and he just didn't get a marquee win, but he fought guys. He's fought George Acosta. He's fought real guys. To me, what stands out about this fight is it's a mutual opponent with Raymond Ford, and I believe Oscar Valdez is at the same weight as Raymond Ford. Should we as smart boxing fans kind of look at this as possibly that? Like, compare Valdez's performance in this fight to Ray Ford, or should we just look?
I think what it you know, a guy that went the distance with Ray Ford is now in with a aging Oscar Valdez who's coming off a stoppage loss, and you can't watch it. I think that's my biggest takeaway on this one.
And new trainer. He left Eddie Reynoso and went back to his original trainer, Manny Robles. You have to assume, though you can never assume anything because Medina is a good fighter, that this is possibly being looked at as like a tune-up type fight or a get right fight, because Valdez does have a higher level career ceiling than Medina to set a big fight in the future. So I think it's viewed as like a regional Mexico card. That being said, weird things happen in boxing.
Yeah, weird things definitely happen in boxing. And listen, the fight is fine. I think for me, Top Rank not having a streaming deal or a distribution deal of any kind is like really tripping the sport up.
Well, I think that there's two things, right? And then PBC is probably like the second strongest promoter in the US, right? And they're just simply not having many shows. So when you have 1 and 2 in terms of promotion in America not throwing a lot of shows, it's easy for people to not pay attention.
Yeah.
Let me text with our possible guest.
Yeah, we're in the stay on your toes era. Don't get too comfortable as a fan and as a viewer.
Yeah, definitely don't do that.
And if you don't go to bigfights.gov, you know, for this random card, you're a hater.
Yeah, so for Man Key Crazy, Nunez is fighting Christopher Diaz according to BoxRec. That is actually what we were talking about earlier. That's on Saturday night on DAZN.
That's my fight of the weekend, personally.
So you would have made the show, Eduardo Nunez versus Christopher.
I think I would. I think I would have. Iglesias is the best.
I think the Iglesias-Shishkin fight is the fight. It's just because it's on a Thursday.
This is why I think that one's more even. I view Iglesias as a healthy favorite on that one, and I think that Nunez and Diaz is more of a toss-up than you might think.
Should we do a poll on the channel? What's the fight of the week? Iglesias-Shishkin versus Sugar Nunez versus Christopher Diaz. Should we go Sugar Nunez versus Pitufo Diaz, or do I put their first names in as well?
That's up to you, Bob.
It's up to me. Well, we got a little bit of time left. As you can tell, it's a very, very slow fight week because we're done in 47 minutes. It shows you just how little we have.
We've done shorter, we've done longer.
But you kind of can tell where the sport's at.
Sure.
Now, next week is going to be a monster show. It's going to be a monster. It's going to be massive because we've got the preview for the Crawford Canelo. And I'm going to try to convince Dakota to get on the live stream after Canelo-Crawford, because I think that our friends and listeners are going to probably want the immediate reaction from me and Dakota. And I think that's one where we can pay him overtime for that. That being said, man, there's just not a ton going on. Next week, we're going to have a ton going on. This month is all right. October is okay. November is pretty good. December, one would assume, is not going to be the greatest unless Saudi puts on a big card in December, because no one really wants to throw shows around the Christmas holiday. And January tends to be pretty weak. So it's starting to feel like we had a lot of slow months in 2025.
I think it's just a slow year. You know, I think the way 23 and 24 went, there was a thought that the trajectory would just continue in a positive direction. And this is the year of transition. And so there's just not there. Like I said, that's why I'm doing the stay on your toes bit, because there is no standard in boxing right now. It's all kind of up in the air. It's all kind of who's commentating, who's fighting, where are we doing, you know, there is no sense of regularity as a viewer and as a fan.
That's true. So our guy, Man Key Crazy, one of our favorites, he wants us to talk about Mark Dickinson versus Troy Williamson. I'm sure you're super well versed in both of these guys.
I know Troy. I don't know Mark Dickinson. I won't lie. Sorry, Man Key Crazy.
So Mike Mark Dickinson is a well-accomplished amateur. Let me find you some of his wins as an amateur over notable names. He's got some, okay, it's always bad when you're scrolling down, you're looking. He's got to have a famous name. Bradley Rea, that's the biggest name I found. So, but he had a good amateur career, right? He's 8-1 as pro. He lost a fight when he went over to Japan against Kazuto Sako. He's won 2 fights since. He's had what I would say a pretty solid professional career so far, outside of going to Japan and losing a close, tough fight. That being said, he's kind of moving into a level outside of going to Japan that he's never been at. His last fight against Reese Farnhill, he won pretty decisively. I mean, I would assume Dickinson should be able to handle this type of fight, given that off the top of my head, I believe Williamson has lost 4 of his last 5 fights. But Williamson is a proven veteran who's been fighting the best guys at this level. And I think the big question I have for Dickinson, and I'll throw this to Mankey Crazy, is do you think his style can work in the pros against physical fighters? That's been my criticism with Mark Dickinson is, does his style work against a certain level of opponent? And is it going to have issues with more durable and physical fighters?
Excellent analysis, Lukey.
Okay, Canelo fight will be 12 rounds, and Billy Martinez and Boachuk Adams are 10 rounds right now.
Mankey Crazy, we love you, bub, but you got to do a little better on the spelling, my guy.
He's just phoning it in. Dickinson fought Kazuko in the Matchroom Contender Series. So he jumped into the Matchroom Contender Series that I guess doesn't exist anymore, and he lost that fight. So he took a risk with his undefeated record going into that tournament and lost over there. And Lionel Watson, our friend good to see you, Lionel. Thank you for stopping by. I see Adams stopping Boachuk again. Boachuk still makes the same mistakes. It could very well happen. I will say this. Boachuk is someone that since I've gotten to know him, he's impressed me because he has a warrior spirit and he trains his ass off and he's very, very tough. Brandon Adams is really, really good. I'm starting to get concerned, like Mankey Crazy has been saying in the chat. Was the Ortiz fight Boachuk's prime? Because the fight with Mike Fox was not promising. Mike dropped him. It wasn't called to drop. To me, it looked like Mike dropped him. It's a very competitive fight. He also didn't. A fight was at 160. It wasn't at that. If the fight's a different weight, I'm not loving that. I don't know. I don't know what to expect because Brandon fought Andreas Katserix. That was a very, very close fight that could have gone either way. He's coming off of that fight, getting into this fight. I don't know. What are your thoughts on it, Dakota?
It's a tough one to clock, bro. My gut tells me that Boachuk is going to win because I just don't ever see Adams in the ring. That's my gut. Okay.
Well, that's our show this week. So thank you to everyone that tuned in. Thank you to everybody that supported. Dakota, where can people follow you this week?
You can always follow me at the Slip and Wave Podcast on YouTube, on Instagram. You can catch me on the Lukey Boxing Show every week. You can check me out over on ITR Boxing.
We got a buzzer beater question. Lukey, did you pick Brian Mendoza to beat Surai? I think you were there.
That was such a good fight, man. Fuck.
I was not there. I was drinking a beer at my house watching those fights, but it was a great fight. Mendoza is one of these guys where I really believe in Mendoza when he was rolling. I'm not sure I'm still quite there with Mendoza. He's still my guy, friend of the program. We need to get that clip of looking into somebody's eyes.
He has a mentality that you just can't count him out. And maybe at some point, the damage toll, but he can also do a lot of different things, man. I just wouldn't count him out just for no reason,
Legendary quote on the show. I need to look into his soul.
I'm just gonna look into his soul real quick.
Said it casually. I'm gonna go to the press conference. Just want to look into his soul.
Yeah, I'm gonna weigh in. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that, and then I'm gonna look into his soul.
I feel like we both sinisterly smiled when he said that. You know,
Oh, so sick.
Were you impressed by Mendoza when we had him on and talked with him? He's a little bit of a different dude, right? But in a good way.
I thought he was great, man. That was one of my favorite interviews, honestly.
But I mean, you didn't expect him to be that way, did you?
I kind of did, to be honest. And then when he said it, I felt very confident that he was going to stop Fendero.
Yeah, that was like a no doubter for me.
Yeah,
in a weird way. Like I just felt like he really that was like his moment, and like I felt like he did not doubt himself a bit, and like he was just, and you know, he's a good puncher. I'm kind of shocked that he didn't beat Tim Tszyu, to be honest. I feel like the weirdest part is if he fought Tim Tszyu on that run right now, he stops Tim Tszyu. It's just like that Tim Tszyu at that momentum at that point. That kind of
momentum is a funny thing, bro. It's a funny thing.
Makes guys overachieve, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Makes some guys overachieve when they got the momentum. We're going to talk a lot about momentum next week too, for a couple of fights. I think the big one for me though with that fight was with Boachuk. I'd always seen him as a crude puncher, and against Mendoza, he really showed me a lot. It was like he has conditioning. He has the ability to put punches together. He's not just a pressure fighter, man. There's more to what he was doing. And I think I lazily overlooked him in his come up. And I really started to see some of the stuff like, oh, this guy, you know, he's not just run at you and punch you. There's some, I'm not saying he's Golovkin, but there's something there that I missed.
Layers.
Yeah, I misread it. And after that, I think I have a habit of this. I undervalue fighters, and then I might overvalue them. You get what I'm saying? So like,
Sure.
I don't respect them enough, and then I'm like, okay, to counteract that, I'm gonna respect them there. 3 not there. Mendoza went to Australia 4 days before the fight with Tim Tszyu. I mean, that kind of makes sense because that performance wasn't great, but that's on Brian. You know, if it's a fight of that magnitude, I think you got to go out of your own wallet and get there a little earlier. You know. But that's just my opinion.
Couldn't agree more.
So, okay, that's our questions. I think we did a great show. We're going to be back next week. Huge show next week. Canelo-Crawford. Oh my God. Who does Lukey and Dakota have? We're going to have results from our poll of what the real main event is. That's going to be what we lead the show with. And then we have way too many fights next week. So not this week. Well, this week we have too many fights, just harder to find them. But the following week, way too many fights. And then I'm sure boxing will once again slow down and we'll go, where are the fights? Where are the fights? So there you go. It's a great show. Let me know if the computer and audio quality on my end look better. And we will talk to you next week.